Or, excuse me, Scott Barber. He's running, but he's not here. Steve Smith. So Steve's up here as well. We're going to follow the same format. We might have a question that's similar. We have lots of good questions that were submitted, so we're going to try and get to a lot of new questions as well. Also wanted to give a quick announcement that we are going to be holding that 50-50 raffle at the very end, and you must be present to win. So again, if you're interested in that, please see events. Okay, with that, let's get started. So the first question, we're going to start here with Mr. Fincham and go over to Mr. Smith and then come back on the next. First question is, what would you do to bring jobs to Arizona quickly to improve the economy?
Well, I think to start with, as we heard with the previous panel, regulations that make sense are one thing, but when you have an over-regulated economy, when you have government intrusion into what really ought to be private sector work, that's where we start getting glue in the works, if you will. I believe that we've got a couple of opportunities that don't receive a whole lot of lift as far as discussion. One of those is we've got an issue with water. In fact, Vince and I were talking about this earlier today. Arizona's biggest issue is water. We have limits that are very real. They're environmental limits that we can't shake. But we can take steps to correct that. I am very much in favor of exploring desalinization, a private enterprise operation that actually is very well connected to another issue we have, and that is border security. One of the things that we could be doing is engaging with Mexico to create jobs south of the border, create a private sector solution to a water company or a water importation, if you will, that will help facilitate the growth of our state and our business opportunity. Jobs are a very real issue. We've got Red Rock, the Union Pacific Railroad site for the expansion of the yard, or the creation of the yard there, held up by bureaucratic state land trust delays. We need to get projects like that fast-tracked, and I'm very impressed with the work that AZDEQ is doing in the application of Six Sigma. Six Sigma basically is a process of improving a process, finding defects that get in the way of business, and help business go from concept to delivery much quicker. So helping the Red Rock situation along. The other thing I believe in is participation in the American Lands Council. We've got an opportunity, I believe, with the federal government who has failed to extinguish title and give us our land. Once we get that, we've got a great amount of opportunity, everything from timber harvesting to lands management. So there are some very real opportunities that we have in the creation of jobs in a relatively short period of time.
Thank you, Mr. Fincham. Mr. Leach.
Number one, jobs. It's right down the road, folks, Red Rock. You've heard me, many of you have heard me talk about Red Rock for the last several years. We need to bring Red Rock in fast. What's most disconcerting about the Red Rock project and the 200 to 400 jobs that it'll provide overall, and that is after all the construction. That's what's left. The New Mexico project, which is nearly the same, classification yard, started after us in getting approvals and is up and running, and we're still going down the road. Now, on a positive note, and this is just a little off the side of jobs itself, but I did get a memo last night from Senator Bob Worsley's office that Union Pacific and State Lines have both hired folks to look at the remaining issues, and the memo was highly encouraging that we still will be on track for hopefully working a deal late summer to fall and get that project going. We have mines. We're blessed in the state of Arizona with natural resources from top to bottom, from coal to uranium, but right here in the south we have Resolution mine that has a little problems with heating because it's such a deep mine, but that will be taken care of. We have Rose mine. 7 years. I had the opportunity at a function earlier this week to talk to Rod Pace, the president of Rosemont, and he said, we're going to be there. He said, it's probably going to be the last half of this year. But he said, we are now on a statutory track that they have to have things done by date certain. And that's going to bring in, that's 2,100 jobs just waiting to trip over the start line when we go with that. We have other mines in San Manuel area. We feel the stress when you get into the mining community. We feel the stress when you go up to the Copper Corridor. You know, the last smelter here in Arizona is over at Hayden, and it's receiving all kinds of EPA pressure. Well, we don't need to close the Hayden smelter down. We need to have more smelters.
Thank you, Mr. Leach. Mr. Smith.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I always start with my obligatory thank you, so I will carve into my time, but you know, I always start by saying thank you to God for allowing us to still freely assemble and talk about the issues in this great nation that He gave us. So let me just start with that, of course. My gosh, thank you all for being here. We wouldn't have much of a forum if you all weren't here, so thank you for taking your time to coming. Jobs, of course, right? That seems to be the big plug word every time a campaign comes along. So what do we do to increase jobs? Hey, Mark and Vince hit it right on the nail. Hit the nail right on the head in terms of our copper mines, in terms of the UP switching yard. Vince is right. We got some very encouraging news just recently about that. So two great opportunities to bring jobs even more to our county. But I'm going to go down the statewide path and let you know some of the things that we've been doing to increase Arizona's jobs competitiveness in general. So one of the, I think it was the very first bill that I helped sponsor in the Senate was the jobs bill from just a couple years ago. Now that jobs bill, what we tried to do was to, create this atmosphere to have people come and start a business, to flourish in their business. I'm the first one that's going to tell you, governments do not create jobs, or we should not let them do very many of them. What we are supposed to be doing in our role of government is to foster the environment for the success economically for jobs to prosper. And that's what we want to do. And what we did in that very first bill, we did a lot of great things. We lowered regulation, we lowered property taxes, we did all these things, but something interesting happened. When we did a few of these types of bills, we saw Arizona move from almost last in the state in job creation, I think we were number 48 at the time, all the way up to recently last year ranked number 4. So that's a pretty good start in terms of how can government help, not do it on their own, but how can they assist in fostering that environment. Forbes magazine, I think, just ranked us this year as being the best place for jobs in the country. We are number 1 in the nation. Arizona is, if you want to start up a business, number 1 in the nation. So what we want to continue to do is some of those things that we've done, build on those. Now I have legislation this year to help bring some of those incentives even more so to the rural areas, right? Everything doesn't have to happen in Maricopa County. Some can come out here, right? So we have some legislation looking directly at that. But I think to answer the question, absolutely, do more of the same. Be a crutch, not the wheelchair, right? Let's help prop up the economy and then get out of the way and let the job creators do what they do best. But then, of course, what Mark and Vince said, let's take advantage of our natural resources. We've got copper mines, we've got sun, we've got all these other things here. Let's take advantage of it, and rest assured, I know the 3 of us will continue to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. The question is back to you, and I believe this one is important for Pinal County as a whole. It deals pretty much with our community colleges. It says, to what extent will you feature and push a state bill to increase funding for the Arizona community colleges? And we know that there's a cost associated with that, so you may wish to discuss cost per district or per the state.
Is that Vince or not?
That's you, Mr. Smith.
Community college. Good question. So the governor outlined in her State of the State address about the need to continue to support K through 12, but of course beyond, which is the community colleges and then the universities. So what do we see every time I speak with somebody, especially at the community college level, whether it be professor, teacher, executive or staff member, they'll generally say this: half of the kids that show up here right from high school need remedial English and math. And it's like, now wait a minute, I thought they just graduated, right? They're going to advance their studies, but here we see that many of our high school kids probably never should have passed certain grades. That social promotion idea that we just say, hey, if you show up, you're on to the next grade. Well, we start to see the flaw in that thinking, right? So I think what I would tell the community colleges and what I have is absolutely, there's certainly models that we can build off of that we've done in the past as well, that we want to bring forward in the future of partnering with them and the local entities around them. You look at some of our colleges in the area, we can partner with the local fire departments and law enforcement agencies for those kids that might want to pursue that avenue. Look at the ag community in our district. I've toured some of these schools, and you can't go far without seeing a big old John Deere tractor. Well, let's get those kids learning how to do some more of that stuff. But what I would say is, of course, we can always talk about money, putting into those institutions, but I always like to also fall back on why are some of these institutions struggling so much in terms of the population coming into them? So what I think we need to do is start looking at K through 12 to get a better crop of student coming out of there and graduating out of there, so when they do get into the community college realm or the higher ed realm, wherever they go, they're now a bit more prepared. We don't need to spend more on remedial and all these things. So it's a two-pronged approach. Make sure the kids in K through 12 are learning and they're graduating what they ought to learn. And then of course let's be that crutch, not the wheelchair, for the community college district and help them the best that we can as we have.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Leach.
So in the LD11, we have two community colleges. We have Pinal, the system in Pinal, and then we have Pima. There's really a dichotomy when you look at the operation of both. I've been on both campuses, and you see the expansion that went through in Santan Valley and in Maricopa, and the movement forward. And I think everyone knows that I stood up and was vociferously against what I thought was a rather out of place 34% tax rate increase at the Pinal Community College, and I still feel that way. That being said, when you go into these community colleges and you look at the avenues and the resources that they provide the local area, and I had a tour down at the Northwest Pima Community College, and Steve, they dovetailed into what you said, but they've got the automotive, the up-to-date automotive. They've got optics going into. They were putting in a brand new lab, building a brand new building for there. So it definitely serves the market. I think one of the things that we have to watch there, though, is while it definitely serves a need, we saw in Pima that it got away from itself and it became a spot where there was a lot of money going, and there were no metrics of where the money was being used and what the graduation rates were. The purpose is there. It serves a great purpose. I think that we just need to watch the metrics and make sure that we are getting the most bang for our buck out of these great community colleges.
Thank you. Mr. Fincher.
I have to start by asking a question, and I am not so sure that we know the answer to it, and that is the need for funds based on actual need? I mean, do we know for a fact that there's going to be volume coming in, or is the money going to be spent on more buildings without teachers and without students? That really concerns me with what we've seen up in Pinal County. Each and every one of us has exchanged something of our life for every single one of these. And I think it's irresponsible to not know exactly what the objective is for every one of these that's going to be spent on dollars. You know, at the opening session, at the legislative forecast lunch, I heard a number of people go directly to increasing funding for education. What I didn't hear in that conversation is exactly what you plan to do relative to that money and what is the intended outcome. One of the things that causes me a great deal of distress that we're looking, and this is coming from the JLBC document on the budget, We got a $256 million shortfall projected in 2016. This is structural deficit. In 2017, $593 million. So if we're going to increase funding for community colleges, that means increased taxes. It's math. It's very simple math. So I think Steve touched on it. We need to stop the social promotion of people. If you can't read by 5th grade, we need to act early. And finally, there is an opportunity for us, again, talking about American Lands Council, if we receive the land that is due Arizona, and we are able to capitalize that land, meaning either sell it, lease it, etc., 50% of the revenue has to go to education. That's a way to grow the opportunity.
This question is back to you, and then we'll be moving over to Mr. Smith again. It says, what do you feel needs to be done to really assure children are receiving the protection necessary through Governor Brewer's new agency replacing CPS?
Heavy oversight. I'm not so sure I'm liking the idea of establishing an agency, a new agency. I believe the last panel referred to this, and I think it was put very eloquently. CPS is actually addressing a symptom, not the disease. When we have an increase in unemployment, we have reams of data showing that domestic assault goes up, crime goes up, child abuse goes up. So it's very much tied to employment. Coming back to the new agency, I think we need to have very clear guidelines. And we have to have qualified leadership. I am a retired public safety officer after 21 years and have seen many child protective agency employees get put in places where they don't have the resources that they need. Every single investigation is time consuming, and you never really know all that's going on until you spend the time and you're able to do the interviews. I think it's absolutely appalling that we fell into the situation that we did with Child Protective Services. I do agree that needs to be a professional agency that is dedicated to one thing, and that is investigating child abuse, investigating child welfare issues, and making sure that they are a conduit for treatment if there's a disease involved, for example, mental illness of a parent, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not just about investigating, it's having a solution to care for the children as well.
Thank you. Mr. Leach.
You know, to have 6,500 cases not just go into too hard file is totally unacceptable. A couple of things. Mark, I would agree on the oversight. One of the things that this past study that came out almost immediately and reported was that the reporting on up the chain of command is very torturous to get back up where action could be taken. Before I go too much further, though, I'd like to give a shout out to PCSO. Our Sheriff Paul is in the back. They just solved the case this week, and they worked in conjunction with CPS in making sure that, and I'm not sure of the details, but we got eyes on these children, and that's happened all over Arizona, and our law enforcement people, as well as the CPS people, as well as many people, just reached out to each other to get eyes on these children and get somebody into these households. One of the things about the solution is I saw a presentation not that long ago where the increased caseload at CPS has basically followed that of the recession pattern here in the state of Arizona. And Mark referred to it just a few minutes ago about employment, and that goes back to jobs. If you can take that stress, and what's the number one thing that parents fight about all the time? It's money, money, money. If you can get good paying jobs, get people back to jobs, talking about a lifestyle, it just takes the pressure off, and you're going to reduce the load on CPS. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
You know, the first thing we did this past session was the director of DES came to us when session started and said, we need more caseworkers for CPS. And we immediately, the very first bill I think we ran that year was an emergency act to hire 50 new caseworkers. Then we allocated money for an additional 150. So CPS received 200 new additional caseworkers last year before we knew about this disaster. So while it's in the news now, let's not kid ourselves. It's been a problem for at least a little while, which is why the need for 200 extra workers came up last year. So the first thing we did again last year was okay, we'll give you 200 new caseworkers. When we talk about the separate division, and I know Director Flanagan, who's going to head that now, he's done some good work. I've sat in on some of those off-session committees about this very project, about this very 6,500 cases, which is a disaster. What I think we need to slightly worry about is the notion, when you look at it at a federal model, after 9/11, what happened? Well, the CIA wasn't enough, and the FBI wasn't enough, and law enforcement wasn't, all right, well now we need a whole new Director of Homeland Security, and we need a whole new underbelly with that. Yeah, it can do some good things, but yeah, we want to be real careful that this new division is not unto itself a highly bureaucratic and costly division. What I just heard the other day was $200 million was not yet enough to start this division of this agency. So on one hand, sure, I'm in favor. DES is a massive agency. CPS, you would argue, was probably one of the most important, if not important, the most important subsections of any agency out there. So yeah, of course, let's make sure we're protecting our kids and the most vulnerable. So in a way, I'm okay with pulling them out of DES, getting out of this, and let's not make any mistake. It's not like DES is like this bastion of great agency, right? They got their problems too, so let's pull out the most important piece and look at it individually. Yes. But let's not be a runaway agency either. So again, as been touched on, accountability, absolutely. Make sure they're doing their job. I will say on the last note, I just got a phone call 2 days ago from one of my constituents who was one of the 6,500. She goes, I just got a call 2 days ago about a case I filed back in 2012. So the good news, I guess, they're actually calling these 6,500 cases now. But the bad news, of course, is, well, how and why do we get there? And I think this new division, I think it will help. Proper oversight and proper spending of money.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Question back to you is, we have about time for 2 more questions, and then I'll give you each a minute for closing. At this time, the question is pertaining to District 11. What programs will you propose or support that will make the most impact on the future of District 11? And it said and Maricopa, but obviously it goes all the way down to Oro Valley, etc. So let's start with you, Mr. Smith.
Sure. Of course, the first subset of that is, well, jobs, and we talked about that. Well, what is good for District 11? Yes, we talked about copper mines, and yes, we've talked about, right, the switching yard with UP at Red Rock. Sure, that's going to bring in some things. What I would like to continue to do is, again, that rural Arizona jobs bill that I helped champion 2 years ago, and that we're still going to try to bring back again this year. We want to try to continue to get that support for that. So I think, number one, what's going to help in our district? Well, of course. I mean, again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but jobs. That's going to help the district. And those are some of the ways that we can do it. I spoke with Don Carden. Don Carden was the first head of the Arizona Commerce Authority. And the Arizona Commerce Authority it's an offshoot of that initial jobs bill that we did. Well, how do we bring more jobs here? Well, one of the great things that we did, we opened up an Arizona Commerce Authority office in the state of California. Why? Well, because they are strangled with regulations, strangled with taxes, and we said, well, why don't you just bring your business here and set up shop here? So we went directly to the source, and we are bringing them here. And what I would like to, again, piggyback off of that is, let's not just bring them just to Maricopa County. That's great, but let's give them even more setups. New York did something interesting. New York says if you come to certain areas of our state, not Manhattan, if you come to certain areas of our state with less businesses, you won't pay business taxes for 10 years, right? It's things like that we want to start taking advantage of and say, well, wait a minute, what would be that magnet to open up a Pinal County in District 11, in District 8, District 16, instead of, right, in other areas of the state? So that's what I would do. But the second big thing I want to hit on is our agricultural community, right? What's going to help our community is preserving that industry, which is a nearly $1 billion a year industry in our county alone. I have legislation now that's going to help correct some of those water right issues that you might have been hearing about. I don't have time to go into it, but I'll be gladly to speak with anybody about this. But again, protecting our ag community. And finally, I'll get into, of course, education. Well, again, Mark had been stuck on it. We're not just going to throw more money at it. What do we do in education? My proposition for years now has been empower the teacher. Performance pay funding for teachers. Don't just throw money at education because you can say, hey, I signed a budget, I gave a bunch of money. No, where did it go? Right? We all know that the teacher at the front of the room yields the best results, so let's empower them. But those are at least 3 or 4 things I would do for our district.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Leach.
Jobs. Am I in now? No, I'm not. Jobs, jobs, and jobs. That is the base. The family is based. The family is the base. From that, you have to have the jobs to support that base. So everything that I've talked about here this afternoon, everything I talk about on the campaign trail, comes back to jobs, jobs, jobs. Less government. A classic that's coming in, and while it ties into education, a classic less government that is coming into us right now, and it's going to be an issue that Steve is going to have to face and the other legislators in the audience, and that is Common Core. That is just more government coming in, and every day you pick up your newspaper, you can see one more thing that Common Core is reaching into, and the expense that we're going to have with the park testing. It's $22 million extra. Where could we use that? Could we use that in the classroom? Less tax. We know through various studies, if you look at the Tennessees, the Floridas, and the Texas and their tax structures, we know that their economic situation is much better than that of Arizona. And we're growing, but we can do some things in those areas. Specifically, when you get down to this more line item, Steve mentioned water. This water extinguishment of water credits in Pinal County, it's got to stop. It's got to be. I know that Representative Pratt, Representative Shope have got a task force that are looking at this, and I commend them for that. But this problem needs to be finally fixed. State lands, Marx has talked about that. School choice, so Representative Fillmore talked about that. We have twice as many kids in school districts in the state of Arizona as we do in Utah. There's no reason for that. It's costly. And so school choice is another area that I really would like to look at. There's 4 bills. If you saw the paper, it was either last night or this morning. There are 4 bills going through the legislature right now that will increase choice.
Thank you, Mr. Leach. Mr. Venture.
Ditto and ditto. As you all probably know, we are running as a team. And I just a moment about that. I think it's a well-fit team because we do see eye to eye on virtually every issue. I'm a constitutional limited government conservative. When there's a free market solution, that's where we need to place our attention. Government doing for us that which we can already do for ourselves is a losing proposition. In business, when you want to try to control costs, what's the first thing you go after? Business people out here, this is going to resonate with you. You look at your overhead. Do you have a layer of management that's unneeded? State government, federal government would be that layer of management in many cases. So just to touch on the top things that I would support, absolutely rural Arizona jobs bill, but regulation and statute sunset. I know we've made some progress on that. We need to do more. JTED funding. We really sorely need to restore full funding for JTED. I was just pulling up a Pew Research number. 29%, I believe it was 29% of high school graduates now have a college degree. Okay, that's great. What about the other 60%? We are in need of trades here in Arizona, everything from construction trades to automotive trades, and the community college is one resource for that. Coming out of high school with a firm foundation to go into an apprentice program or some other type of program. That's where a lot of kids want to go these days because that's where the jobs are. Challenging EPA on unconstitutional acts. We are about to see as much as a 65% increase in our power cost because of Navajo Generating Station. Federal government is out of control, and I think it's the state's responsibility to push back and apply a 10th Amendment. We have states' rights, and for too long I think we've been asleep at the switch and not really exercised those, and we need to press those vigorously and regularly. repeal of Common Core and free market health care programs, I think are, because, let's face it, Obamacare is going to collapse. So what's Plan B?
Thank you, Mr. Finchel. The next question is back to you, and this will be the last question before I give you a minute. Positive or negative for our community and government? Please demonstrate your position with specific examples from your own career and possibly future plans.
In 1 hour, I believe?
2 minutes.
So I may actually diverge from folks in the room. I'm a term limits proponent. I think that term limits are about the only check and balance, besides voting somebody out of office, that break up long-time, long-standing groups of influence. We see that in the county that I come from. People have been in office forever. Nobody remembers, many people, I shouldn't say nobody, many people don't remember a day when certain individuals were not on the county board of supervisors. So I have a thriving business in Oro Valley. I'm stepping forward for this position simply to serve my community. I'm not interested in making a career. Career politicians, I think, are the bane of our existence. Yes, I heard somebody say at the opening day, you just get to a point where you know what you're doing and then you're out of office. Okay, one group of people to hold an office in perpetuity. That's just not what the framers of our Constitution, and even our state Constitution, had in mind. It's supposed to be a revolving door.
Thank you very much. Mr. Leach.
So you finally may hear just a little bit of difference from panelists up here. In my run, which started April 22nd, I've tried to just immerse myself into the whole process. And in looking at how I was going to run, most of us that decided that we're going to run have a pretty good idea of all the articles on the front page, where we would be the second, third page, fourth page, and then maybe even the back page. But as you get into the issues that don't even make the paper, that are everyday issues that are bothering and cumbersome on all of us, where do you go? Okay, and where I'm coming with that is if term limits, while they're good, you rotate over. Yes, Mark, you have a lot of people coming in with a lot of new ideas, but what you give up is the institutional knowledge base. And the institutional knowledge base is basically gone over to another group in governments, be it a small government, be it state government, be it federal government, and that is the famous word lobbyists, because they are the ones that are there day in, day out, year in and year out, and they have all the information, and many of the lobbyists were in session, and so they can remember back to 15, 20, 30 years ago. And so I'm not saying that I'm against term limits. What I'm saying is that we have to weigh what you get with term limits with what you lose, and where you're giving the institutional knowledge, and who has the institutional knowledge outside of government. I've talked to 2 or 3 legislators this morning. I had the privilege to talk to Senator Dave, and most of us have been told your first year up there, and I'm sure Representative Frank, Representative TJ was just up there, that first couple of weeks is like drinking from a fire hose. It's coming at you so fast. And the only place that you can go is to that institutional knowledge base. I see Senator Melvin smiling. I think he's used that comment more than once. And so that is some of what you give up when you turn over often, is you have to form a base of people that you can call and say, I don't really understand this bill, or after it comes out of lead council, is this good, bad, or indifferent? You still have to make up your mind, but you don't have all the backup of many years of experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leach. Mr. Smith.
Well, so we have term limits in Arizona, okay? So you can only serve 4 consecutive terms in each house. So if you want to be a member of the House of Representatives or Senate, you can run 4 2-year terms, and then that's it. Now, yes, you can play the dance, and I can go over here for a little bit, or come back, but I guess we have soft term limits here. Federally, of course, that's a whole other ball of wax, right? You know, you see people in office for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and it's like, oh my gosh. But sometimes if you want to get rid of these people, you can't, because they built up such a war chest, or other things, or they gained lobbyist support for decades, that's hard to unseat them. So, you know, there's that balance. But of course in Arizona we have them. Here's what I tell everybody about term limits. Every single one of us has term limits every time we run. Why? Because if we have an informed electorate, and Dave Farnsworth said it, Senator Farnsworth earlier in the previous panel, if you like the job that's being done, vote for it. If you don't, don't. But you have to be informed. You can't just take our word for it, or other people's word for it. Yeah, I'm doing a good job. Okay, yeah, really? Let me see your voting record. What are the issues that I care about? Maybe I really care about education. Maybe I really care about healthcare. Maybe I really care about, you know, whatever it is. Where did you stand on those issues? And that's what you need to do. You, me, everybody, when we go to that ballot box. And again, Arizona, we have term limits. Federally, we don't. But again, I'd say every elected official has term limits, right? We keep hearing now, in Arizona, before these term limit laws changed, we had that good old Rios dynasty, didn't we? Good old Pete and Rebecca, right? But we showed them what we thought about their 30 years in service in the Senate, didn't we? We got rid of them. Why? It was their time to go. Now, they thought the Rios stamp was on every seat from the county supervisor on down because they were just a Riosist. But what did we tell them? No, it isn't. You're a dereliction of duty, so out of office. What does Sheriff Babbitt do? Same thing. What did Frank and TJ do? Same thing. So that's what we want to keep doing. John Fillmore, same thing. So it's up to the informed electorate to say you are either doing a good job or you're not. I could care less what you say on the stage. I'm going to take and invest the time to find out how you actually voted on the stuff I care about.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. And with that, I will now go into allow each of you 1 minute. I'll start with you, Mr. Smith. Please tell us why you're the best candidate for this job in this district.
So, remember the part where I just said, don't listen to anything I say? I'm still going to hold true to that. Don't listen to what I say. There's 3 main scorecards that are out there that tell you how good of a job I did. Not what I said, what these scorecards. So the first scorecard is the Goldwater Institute. I think most of you know them. Who's the stand for economic freedom and personal liberty. And recently, I'm always at the top of their scorecards. Recently ranked #1 out of all 90 legislators on the Goldwater scorecard. Okay, you don't like that one? Let's go to the second one, right? Americans for Prosperity. Who are they? National organization. What do? They look out for the taxpayer, mainly. They do a lot of things, school choice. But the big thing is, are you protecting the taxpayer's dollars? I'm always ranked at the top. Recently, named champion of the taxpayer. Their highest designation, right? You don't like that one? Let's go on to something a little bit closer to home. Arizona Conservative Coalition. Who are they? Well, they look at how well you adhere to the Republican platform in large part. How well are you, holding on to Reagan conservative Republican, national Republican platform issues? In the 3 years I've been in office, I've been ranked #1 twice. Okay? So what I would tell you is this. Yep, I can say a lot of good things. But yep, if you go and investigate my record, you will clearly see, not because I said it, the scorecards that we look at have me #1 each year.
Thank you.
I look at the opportunity to serve my district and the constituents of my district as a continuation of what I've done since coming to Arizona. I came to Arizona and immediately ran into a bureaucracy at the state level, primarily in the Arizona Corporation Commission, and he helped with many people, including Senator Melvin, running the bill. We changed the law in the state of Arizona, making it easier for individuals to invest in their houses of faith. I have fought at the county level. Many of you know my middle name by P. Rios is You're Out of Order. We fought him so much and we finally got it. It took an extra year to get the taxes put down. You know that I fought on the redistricting. We've still got those cases going forward, and we're still patiently waiting for an answer. But I fought that, and just look at the gerrymandered district. I thought 11 was terrible until I looked at Brenda Barton's district last night, Legislative District 6. And fought school taxes, and with that, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fetchel.
Thank you very much for your time and your attention. I am a pro-life constitutional conservative. I'm a free market advocate, life member of the NRA. life member of the Fraternal Order of Police, a fellow with Secure America Now, a sponsor of the Goldwater Institute financially and with my time. This is off the path, but an A-rated realtor for 5 years with Angie's List. For what? For service to my clients, because I pay attention to them first at the expense of all others and myself. I'm a fiduciary, not professionally, but as a realtor, I'm a fiduciary. I'm also past president of Oro Valley Business Club. So I've had a foot in both worlds, both public and private, and I think that I've built a pretty successful business myself. It's been said a man is often judged by the company he keeps, and I think that my past performance is a very good view of what you can expect from me in the future. I carry cards with me, and if anybody wants to know about the foundation because I said I would, please see me at the end of this. But I have a card for you, and if I say something here that you want to hold me accountable for, I'll give you a card because I said I would.
Thank you. Let's give these guys a big round of applause.